Prologue. The noise we mistake for life. The world tells you to move, to hurry, to chase. Every hour must scream productivity or pleasure. We scroll as if silence were punishment. But what if stillness was the highest form of movement? The Blind Stoic begins here, in a quiet room that most people run from. Because when the body stops, the mind finally speaks. And what it says first is often uncomfortable. At home, without distraction, you hear the echoes of everything you've avoided, the fears you dressed as ambition, the noise you called progress. The room you once ignored becomes a mirror. Every unwashed dish, every unmade bed, every unfinished task whispers the same question. What are you running from? You thought staying home was retreat, but perhaps it's the first real confrontation. Chapter 1. The room as a mirror. When a blind Stoic sits in solitude, the walls speak. Not with words, with reflections. Your surroundings record you more honestly than your memories. A cluttered desk reveals the chaos of thought. A silent phone exposes the depth of dependence. A neat corner radiates self-respect. Your environment is not separate from you. It is an extension of your state. If you wish for peace of mind, begin by ordering what you can touch. Cleaning a table is not housework. It's philosophy performed with a cloth. The Stoics never built temples for worship. They built discipline within routine. The blind Stoic learns that to shape the room is to shape the mind, because when the space grows quiet, the noise inside no longer has anywhere to hide. Chapter 2. The weight of stillness. At first, stillness feels heavy. The moment you stop moving, time expands around you like a thick fog. Minutes stretch, silence presses. You might mistake that pressure for loneliness, but the blind Stoic knows it's training. Every second you remain still, while the world rushes by, you build invisible strength. Stillness is resistance against the constant pull of reaction. It is the muscle that holds patience, the art that sustains focus. Sit long enough, and you begin to notice that your mind, like water, clears only when undisturbed. Ideas settle, emotions reveal shape. Truth, once drowned by noise, floats to the surface. Most people never reach this clarity because they flee before the quiet begins to teach. They call the discomfort boredom. The Stoic calls it the doorway. Chapter 3. Energy without movement. The world confuses energy with motion, but movement can be panic in disguise. True energy does not always announce itself. It gathers. When you stay home, you stop leaking power into trivial encounters and random impressions. Your attention, once scattered, returns like migrating birds. You start feeling full again. The blind Stoic learns that silence is not empty, it's charged. Every moment without distraction stores potential. You begin to create rather than consume. A thought written down, a plan revised, a breath counted. These are quiet revolutions. Think of a bowstring drawn but not released. That is focused solitude, power restrained, direction prepared. When you finally step back into the world, each action lands with precision. Chapter 4. The Blind Stoic's Practice. Isolation becomes insight only through discipline. Without structure, solitude decays into drifting thought. The blind Stoic treats each day at home as sacred training. He wakes with purpose. No alarms of panic, no endless notifications. Just awareness returning to a body that will be his arena for the day. Morning is for order. He tends to his space, folds, cleans, arranges. Each act is small, but together they declare, "I govern this life." Then he sits. Sometimes with eyes closed, sometimes open. He watches the stream of his mind the way a philosopher watches the clouds, letting each one pass without judgment. When emotions rise, he doesn't fight them. He observes their pattern. because wisdom begins with seeing before reacting. Midday, he studies. A page of philosophy, a paragraph from history, a note of gratitude. He feeds the mind deliberately so that thought becomes nourishment, not noise. Evening is reflection. What moments triggered impatience? What silence brought clarity? He writes, not for the world, but to sharpen his perception of it. This is how staying home becomes growth instead of stagnation. The blind Stoic doesn't hide from the world. He rehearses his return. Every routine at home is a preparation for re-entry, performed in calm instead of chaos. In the silence of home, the world begins to echo differently. You start hearing the crowd inside your own thoughts, the endless dialogue between fear and wisdom, between noise and meaning. That inner conversation is where insight lives, turning isolation into insight. Chapter 5. Facing the inner crowd. When the noise outside fades, another crowd begins to speak. The one inside you. Every forgotten memory, every fear, every echo of past conversations rises like guests who are always waiting. Most people leave the room when that crowd arrives. The blind Stoic stays. He knows the voices are not enemies. They are echoes of what he has ignored. In silence, resentment complains, insecurity whispers, regret argues. Listen long enough and you'll hear a pattern. Every voice wants recognition, not resistance. The moment you listen without reacting, the crowd quiets. Stillness is not emptiness, it is negotiation. When you face the inner crowd with calm authority, you become the host again. The blind Stoic smiles and says, "You may stay, but you may not lead." That is the beginning of inner order. The discovery that peace is not the absence of noise, but mastery over it. Chapter 6. The art of seeing without going. You don't have to travel to witness the world. The blind Stoic sees farther from a silent chair than most see through a window seat. To stay home does not mean to shrink. It means to deepen. When your mind becomes clear, imagination turns into a telescope. You see motives behind actions, causes behind chaos. You begin to notice how impatience drives the city and how desire manipulates the crowd. Stillness becomes a lens. Without movement, details sharpen. What you once called nothing happening reveals subtle rhythms, the way light shifts, how thoughts repeat, how emotions visit and leave. Seeing without going is the highest freedom. The world can no longer blind you with motion. You observe, understand, and choose when to act. Chapter 7. The invisible dialogue. Solitude is often mistaken for silence, but the blind Stoic knows it is full of conversation. Books speak, memories respond, imagination adds its counsel. Every great thinker built their wisdom in this invisible dialogue. When you read, you invite centuries to visit your room. When you write, you answer them back. When you think clearly, you join a lineage that needs no applause. The blind Stoic writes not to be read, but to hear himself better. He keeps a quiet journal. Fragments of thought, questions, lessons. Each line is a conversation between who he was in the morning and who he is tonight. The invisible dialogue is how isolation turns fertile. Instead of fighting loneliness, you collaborate with it. You make silence your co-author. Chapter 8. The alchemy of discomfort. Every discipline begins with a sting. The discomfort of solitude is the raw metal that wisdom refines. Stay long enough in that fire, and the burn becomes light. The blind Stoic does not escape boredom. He studies it. He asks why his mind reaches for distraction. He learns that the urge to escape is simply the fear of meeting himself. Once he accepts that meeting, the room transforms. What was prison becomes sanctuary. What felt like isolation becomes intimacy with his own soul. The philosopher is not someone who always knows. He is someone who no longer runs from not knowing. That is the quiet courage solitude teaches. Chapter 9. Reclaiming Time. When you stop chasing constant engagement, time expands like a field after rain. Minutes no longer vanish into noise, they breathe. The Blind Stoic learns to measure time, not by clocks, but by depth. A single mindful hour at home can equal a day lost in distraction. He discovers that productivity was never about doing more, but wasting less. Reclaiming time is reclaiming ownership of life. Every pause, every breath, every deliberate act is an act of defiance against the world's hypnosis. You stop being a passenger and become the witness again. Chapter 10. The Return Without Noise. When you finally step outside again, the world feels slower. You walk through it like someone visiting an old city after years of study. Everything familiar looks different because your vision changed. The Blind Stoic returns without urgency. He speaks less but means more. He helps without performing. He listens before answering. The noise of others no longer infects his clarity. This is the quiet victory of staying home. You leave not as an escapee, but as a seer. Epilogue. The home. Within home was never the walls. It was the awareness that filled them. When the Blind Stoic says, "Stay home," he means return to yourself. The chair, the candle, the breath, these are doorways, not cages. Through them you travel farther inward than miles could ever take you. And when you finally understand that the greatest journeys are silent, you realize you were never confined, only untrained to see. So stay home, see more, because in seeing clearly, you no longer need to run. The world begins and ends in the calm center you built when you chose stillness over noise. Chapter 11. The First Step. Outside. After a long silence, the smallest sound becomes enormous. The first step outside is not movement. It is measurement. You test whether the stillness you built indoors can survive open air. The street looks unchanged, same walls, same wind, same noise, yet something within you has shifted. The mind that once chased every motion now observes them like clouds drifting. The Blind Stoic breathes, and with each breath he proves that peace was never the room. It was the rhythm he carried. He walks slowly, feeling each footfall as an oath. Do not rush. Every passerby becomes a teacher, every noise a test. A car horn demands reaction. He gives none. A stranger's frown seeks conflict. He offers calm. This is how the lesson of solitude graduates into life. Chapter 12. The Mirror of Others. When you meet people again, you realize solitude changed your eyes. You no longer see only behavior. You see hunger behind behavior, fear behind words. A friend interrupts you to prove his importance. A colleague brags to hide insecurity. A critic complains because pain needs an audience. The Blind Stoic doesn't judge, he observes. Each encounter reflects what used to exist within him. Where he once reacted, he now recognizes. He learns that empathy is not softness, it is clarity. To understand the chain behind another's actions is to stop being dragged by it. Others become mirrors, not masters. So when conversation grows heated, he listens until the flame runs out of oxygen. When praise comes, he accepts it as sound, not scripture. Because balance is not isolation. It is interaction without infection. Chapter 13. Stillness in Motion. Solitude taught stillness. The world now demands motion. The challenge is to move without losing silence. The Blind Stoic travels, works, meets deadlines, but inside the same quiet river flows. He has learned that peace is portable. You do not leave it behind like a candle, you carry it like a pulse. When traffic crowds, he observes rhythm. When decisions press, he recalls breath. The mind acts, but the core remains unmoved. To outsiders, this looks like detachment. To him, it feels like mastery. He participates fully, yet remains unseen by chaos, like wind shaping a flame without extinguishing it. Chapter 14. The Discipline of Ordinary Days. Grand insights mean nothing if the bed is unmade. The blind Stoic returns to chores, to work, to repetition, not as burdens but as practice. Philosophy hides in the simple. Washing dishes becomes a meditation on completion. Answering messages tests patience. Walking to the market measures awareness. He knows enlightenment is not earned in temples, it's maintained in routines. Every small act is a conversation with the present moment. To live well is to serve the ordinary with extraordinary attention. He repeats his rituals, morning order, mindful breathing, evening reflection. What once felt like habit now feels like harmony, because wisdom is not a lightning strike. It's the steady current of disciplined days. Chapter 15. The Practice of Presence. Presence is more than awareness, it's allegiance. To be present is to pledge loyalty to now. The blind Stoic trains this allegiance the way warriors train reflex. Whenever the mind wanders to past or future, he calls it back gently. No punishment, only reminder, you are here. He eats slowly, noticing the weight of flavor. He listens fully, letting words land before judgment forms. He walks without phone, allowing the world to speak in subtler tones. Presence turns minutes into depth. A single conversation, fully lived, becomes richer than a month of distraction. In presence, life stops being background noise and becomes participation. Chapter 16. The World as Dojo. The blind Stoic realizes the world itself is the new training ground. Every difficulty is a sparring partner, every delay a test of patience. He no longer asks for ease, he asks for opportunity to practice. When insult comes, he rehearses dignity. When temptation whispers, he drills restraint. When confusion clouds, he tests clarity. He carries the same composure from his room into the marketplace, transforming chaos into curriculum. This is applied Stoicism. Philosophy not as thought, but as posture. And when he fails, because all humans do, he smiles. Even failure is feedback. Even pain is instruction. Chapter 17. The Gift of Visibility. After long invisibility, being seen again can feel dangerous. People praise your calm, ask for advice, mirror your manner. But admiration can become another trap. The blind Stoic remembers, the goal was never attention, it was alignment. He accepts recognition, but anchors it in humility. He knows that light blinds as easily as darkness. True vision survives both. To stay clear while being watched is another layer of mastery. You continue to serve quietly, unseen, even when visible.